Welcome back to Love, Life, and Legacy, the podcast dedicated to helping you navigate these hypersexual times. And today, everybody, we're going to do something. We're going to take a clip from the 24-hour podcast. And I know a lot of you did watch this. We had a bunch of people tuning in from around the world, but many of you did not. And even if you did see this particular session, you didn't see enough of it because you need to see this over and over and over again just to even figure out if it's real or not. Because this is basically is a conversation between three elder couples about what does sex look like after 60. And it's raw and it's real and it's the best thing ever. It really is. I don't know if you watch the video of this, just look at my face and I'm basically in heaven because this is something that I didn't even know that I needed or wanted. But my soul really, really desperately was longing for this conversation, just to be a fly on the wall. I was basically just a digital fly on the wall for this conversation, but I was tickled. I was tickled thoroughly by it because it was funny. It was emotionally satisfying. It just felt like checking in with your relatives, the relatives that you really like hanging out with, and them passing on wisdom that can only be learned through experience, not through books or anything. And wisdom like that, the wisdom that is true wisdom, that is in your bones, in your veins, the stuff that life has taught you itself through the days on this earth, cannot be replicated any other way. It's only etched into you by experience. And so this is what they're giving to us, which is makes it priceless. So we have the Busings, we have the Weatheralls, and we have the Wolfenbergers, three couples in different stages of life. You know, they're a few slightly, different ages, a gradient, I guess, of ages. And I loved every second. Please listen to it. It doesn't, if you're young and single, just chalk this down to life goals. Like, I want to have a marriage like this when I'm in my 60s and 70s. And if you're older and let's just say things aren't going as well as these other couples, that's not the point, is to compare yourself. It's just to know that it's possible for all of us. And this is what God wants for every single one of us. It takes some practice. It takes some work. It takes some effort. So please just listen to it and get from it what you will. But please enjoy it because I feel like this is a really heavenly situation. So enjoy this episode, loosely entitled Sex in the 60s, but also I called it Wisdom from Our Elders because that's at its core what is going on here. Enjoy. Without further ado, I want to welcome up three couples. We're going to go through three different topics with these couples. We're going to unpack them. I'm not going to say much because I don't know what I'm talking about. I haven't reached that point in my life yet. So let's welcome up three couples. We have Uncle David and Aunt Mitzway Wolfenberger. Welcome back to Founders. Hello. And thank you so much for your sleep deprivation throughout these 24 hours. It's been a wild, wild journey for you. Next up, we have Uncle Richard and Aunt Marjorie Busing. Welcome them up. Hello.
Hello.
Colorado. And lastly, we have Uncle Roger and Aunt Daniela Weatherall, the Weatheralls from Connecticut.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. It's nice to see you.
Amazing. So, first of all, thank you so much for coming here today and for being a part of this long overdue conversation that I wish more people could have exposure to constantly. But hopefully they can peek over our shoulders and enjoy this conversation with us today. So I'm going to just kind of frame the context for the first kind of topic, and then I'm going to literally mute myself because I have nothing to say unless, whatever. So the first thing is I wanted to hear if you had anything to say, any advice, any words of wisdom for couples who might be sexually active still, but not the frequency or not the enjoyment level. Maybe they're struggling. Maybe there's long gaps in between making love, or maybe things just aren't they're not in a good rhythm or what have you, do you have anything that any words of encouragement or wisdom or anything that you'd like to say for these couples?
Who wants to go first?
Just have fun, people. You love talking about sex. We all love it. So let's go.
It's important to have fun. Have fun together, because your sexual life and your foreplay begins at breakfast. If you make love at night, then you start at breakfast being respectful and kind to each other, and do things together, go shopping together, hold hands a lot. I think holding hands is so important. If I don't hold Richard's hands, then he ends up 10 paces ahead of me. And I have to block. So, I mean, it's kind of imperative that I hold his hand, but
you have to drag her along. I mean,
Yeah, we enjoy those long walks together too, and it's the same thing. You have to slow your pace down a bit, right?
Yeah, but we actually skip too.
yes, I do that with my granddaughter. But
skipping is a lot.
Important.
If you're feeling down and you start skipping, you can't help but be happy, right? So
this is a life hack. That is a great life hack.
This is a life hack. Okay. Sorry, Marjorie, continue.
No, that's good. I like that. It's important to have fun and do things together before you get to the bedroom. It's just helpful to have fun together. Go to a movie. Our neighbor, they're in their 80s, and they can no longer physically have a relationship because of health reasons, but they still hold hands, and then he doesn't really walk anymore. He kind of shuffles, but he gets out there, and they do things together, and I think that's really important. That's the beginning of everything.
Sure.
So can I ask about hand holding real quick? Because there might be some cultures out there where it's not very common to hold hands. So is it a Western thing maybe, or do you think it's a heavenly thing? Because some stuff is cultural and some stuff is just heavenly, right? So what is your feeling about hand holding?
It's heavenly.
It's
actually heavenly thing. Two parents held hand. Oh,
that's right.
Yeah.
I saw father and mother hold hands many times.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you hold your husband's hand at night before you go to bed and you squeeze it, you're actually giving each other's a body massage. And it's only your hands. And the closeness that it brings, it's really unbelievable.
My wife likes to do that with my feet too.
Those sneak feet attacks.
I'll be lying in bed about to go to sleep, and then she'll come in and the hands come in under the covers, and then she grabs me and she starts tickling me.
For the ears.
Yeah, I think whatever you want to hold that helps you to feel close to each other, hands, feet, other appendages, it's perfectly okay.
But
for me, before we wake up, I sleep on his shoulder. He put his arm, and I sleep like this. We do it every morning, and that's very peaceful, and I love that.
Anyway, this thing about having fun together, I think, is really important in order to build a relationship and to prepare for sex. I think desire, or especially as you get older, you realize that actually 90% of making love starts in the mind, right? It's the desire that you build, the closeness that you build, and having fun together, whether that's through dancing or going for a walk or going to a movie, as you said, or just spending time talking and talking each other's love languages through the day helps to build that. The other day we were talking about romance, and I was thinking, what is romance? The popular view of romance that is publicized in the movie means spending a lot of money on your spouse. And it's usually the guy spending a lot of money on the woman. Doing something outrageous. But for me, romance is really about having fun. It's about doing something that's really enjoyable for both of us. And we love sharing jokes and laughing with our kids, or just playing a game of cards together, or this kind of stuff. And that helps to build the emotional connection, which is a prerequisite for actually making love in the evenings or in the mornings or whenever it might be.
So one of the things that really grates me is when people talk about having sex. Making love is actually more accurate, because when you make sex, it's like, would you like a glass of water, or would you like to have sex? It's empty. It's actually not connecting to our spirit. But when we shift to making love, even in Italian, we say fare l'amore, which means to make love, to create love. It brings an energy to the union where you can actually connect to God in a very important way. And for me, that was really important, not just now, but throughout our blessing life. Because when they talk about a chemical attraction, that was not present for me when we were matched.
What's for me?
Yeah, but for you, it's like, they have legs. For me, that attraction wasn't there. The spiritual attraction, the fact that my husband is an incredibly loving and faithful person to God, and is a prayerful man, and has this internal life, incredible father. I mean, it's just like, adds up to my desire to be part of him, to be one with him. So that spiritual integrity is so important to the desire, taking you to the desire of physically becoming one and creating that loving energy. So unless you have that, and one of the ways that I had to overcome my physical lack of attraction was really asking God, show me, how do you love this man? And that was an incredible experience, because I had this prayerful heart in my mind for like 3 weeks. And then one evening we started talking and sharing, and suddenly I had this epiphany, this incredible experience where God made me feel how God feels for my husband, what God feels for my husband. And I melted. I told myself, if God loves my husband like this, who am I not to love him in the same way? So I'm often reminded of that experience, and I really encourage people who have difficulties, especially women, or I'm not saying men don't, but especially us women, to really up the level of spirituality in your couple and develop that, having fun, the spiritual aspect, and really find ways to understand that God is alive in that union. That's where the horizontal and the vertical meet in that core center. When we are one, is where God is present. That's my take on this.
Yeah, I would say that husband and wife, they benefit when they consider each other's life more precious than their own. In our marriage, I open all the doors. I think she remembers how to open doors. I'm not sure. I don't know when the last time she opened the door was, but I do that because I really feel that Mitsui is my queen. And just like True Mother, I would open the door for True Mother. We'd all open the door for True Mother, right? So if our spouse is a king or a queen, then yeah, it's good we treat them like that. So beautiful.
My husband used to push me aside so that he could go first.
Wanted to open the door.
And I come from a country, Italy, where women are treated as princesses. Even my own father would open the door for me, or my younger brothers, and he would just do like this and go first. I was
Don't worry, Daniela. I'll have a talk with him later, okay?
I've gotten better.
35 years later, he's not doing that anymore. I tripped him a few times.
So far, I mean, the question was about if a couple isn't having a good sex life.
Oh, yeah.
And they do, well, no. It's beautiful because what you're saying, I think, is absolutely true, is that a lot of times what people want is the result while skipping the process. And what you're talking about is the process of
Absolutely.
cultivating intimacy and love and trust, which is essential for experiencing like a loving sexual bond, not just the physical. And I think, Aunt Daniela, you were really clear on that. The difference between sex and love is one is physical, one is spiritual. It's beyond the kind of animalistic nature of it. It's something transcendental. So I think that's not what probably some people want to hear, but what they need to hear, right? Which is, if you want your wife or husband to kind of open up sexually to you, first you have to open up emotionally to each other. And that's far more important and long lasting. And sex will be a part of that, but it's more in the kind of the resultant rather than the focus, the cause.
One thing I wanted to add was, it's really important. I mean, we're in our 70s, and it's really important to go to the doctor and get regular checkups.
Keep healthy.
Keep healthy. Walking. We're really big on walking, and not always together because he's faster than I am. But we really walk, and we do squats every day, and we exercise and check each other. Richard was gone for a week in California. While he was gone, I wasn't as good at my eating as when he's here. We're much better together. But it's important to go to the doctor. And I remember one time a sister came up to me, and she had gone through menopause. She was in her 60s, and she was practically in tears, saying, "It's so painful. My husband really wants to make love, but it's so painful." And I said, "Well, in your kitchen, do you have coconut oil?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Move it to the bedroom." And
wrong room.
No. And the
That's
next, that's right, we're cooking in the bedroom. So next time I saw her, she threw her arms around me and whispered in my ear, and they were so happy now. But I know for a woman after menopause, often you need some lubricant to help. Otherwise, it can be very painful. And other things can come up that affect it. For men, there's prostate issues arise in the 60s and things like that. It's important to go to the doctor. Doctor every year.
That's very true, Marjorie. And some things don't come up. And so it's important to go to the doctor also.
Right.
Yes. So let's officially, you are all clearly professionals, because that's the next topic. And you segued very beautifully, Aunt Marjorie. And so that is advice or comfort or anything for couples who are not having sex whatsoever due to illness or due to death. In some cases, we do have a growing number of widows and widowers, and we don't really have a lot of kind of support for them, especially in terms of intimacy and sex. So do you have any kind of words of wisdom for that demographic of people in our movement? I mean, and we already got started, so I'm sorry. I feel like I'm Debbie Downer over here, but and Marjorie, what you were saying was true in terms of go getting your checkups, make sure you're healthy. Uncle Dave, you were starting to go down that road. Maybe you can continue down sometimes things don't work the way you would like them to.
Yeah, sometimes things break down. If you got an old car or something, then things stop working. And whenever I think whenever there's any problem, well, Mitzi and I, we generally go to the doctor together, whether it's for her or for me, but especially if it's something sexual. One time she had something going on down there, and I went to the doctor, and she had to have some surgery, and then she goes to the doctor with me also. About 5 years ago, I wasn't able to. I had like 3 times in a row where I wasn't able to maintain an erection long enough to have an orgasm. And a lot of times too, I would, in delaying my own gratification, waiting for Mitsue, then it's not as easy as it used to be. So I went to the doctor, and she said, "Oh, that's no problem. My husband, he takes these." And so I went to get some pills, and that took care of the problem. I felt like I was 30 again. So, and I know that it can be embarrassing for some men. I did some research, and I found out that the body stops producing some enzyme that closes a valve in the penis, and so it's not unlike controlling high blood pressure or heart medication when you get older. It's just a thing, and if a little pill will do the job, then God bless the little pill.
Don't worship the pill, Uncle David.
But
Worship
do go
the
to your
creator.
doctor first, because some people, they have a heart condition which could not be healthy. It could cause a heart attack. So seek medical advice first.
Well, what about that reality, Aunt Marjorie, that you brought up with your neighbor, right? You said you have a neighbor and he's beyond his physical capacity to perform in that arena, right? So what are people, how are people supposed to interpret that? Like a relationship that ends or has somebody who's physically incapable of sex. How can they make the most out of that situation?
This couple, they still sleep together, and they're so kind to each other. They're so loving. Next time you come and visit Andrew, I'll introduce you to them.
Great.
She's always trying to find things for them to enjoy together, and they often go out to eat, or they go to a movie almost once a week, or they're going to take a cruise. But she finds things that physically he can have fun doing. And she's also, they joined our book club. We have a little book club here, and to stimulate his mind and to be with other people socially. And I think that's real love, that they're both taking care of each other. They're aware of what brings each other joy, and they show each other respect all the time. And I think that's important.
Yeah. And I think apart from the orgasmic sex, there's also sensual sex, right? Making love in a very sensual way, just through touching and being close together, like being in bed holding each other, and for me, we still enjoy making love, and it's a beautiful experience. And I was reading recently, people were asking, when is actually the most fulfilling time in a person's life, and it's actually around about 65. So I've still got a couple of years to go. So.
Actually, for me, it's really Roger and I have been in the business of creating memories.
Yeah.
And it started when we started having children, and it is still going to this day. And that means we have done things together. And the time that we stopped doing that is actually the time that a marriage relationship really went downhill. So, you know, Roger and I did yoga for a few years together. We did ballroom dancing, which was amazing because ballroom dancing, I mean, my father was a singer and a dancer, and he taught me how to dance beautifully when I was a teenager. When Roger danced, he looked like he had cerebral palsy. And he would be stepping on my feet all the time. And the last thing I wanted to do was dance with this gorgeous man. So being able to do ballroom dancing was incredible because he learned how to lead. My feet were saying, thank you for taking care of us, not stepping on them. And it created an incredible unity. And now we've been doing Tai Chi. I brought into Tai Chi classes 3 years ago, and we do Tai Chi together. And it's such a beautiful thing. When, you know, when we do it together, we do it in this room, we go to a class together. And I thought he would never be interested in doing that. And actually, he's extremely good. And he listens to his master. Just kidding. But
Mostly I listen to her. Sometimes
he pretends to.
I get a little upset sometimes.
But I think creating that memory, creating that is really, you know, I personally, even though I do enjoy the love making, and when we make love, I feel God's presence, and I always thank God for having come up with this incredible reality. But if we didn't, I would be equally satisfied. Because what we have created is so incredible, and we can tap in those memories like the Star of Bethlehem. Remembering that moment that Jesus was born, that moment so precious in history, for me, it's paramount to the way we relate. And we have a couple. We have a friend, a husband and a wife, and she went into menopause early, and having a relationship was hell for her. And then when she eventually found out how to overcome that, her husband had erectile dysfunction. But actually, it was really interesting because I could see them throughout all this stage. And now that they don't have that physical relationship, they are closer than ever. I had never seen them that close. And I asked her, and I know we are involved spiritually together. We do a lot of things spiritually. But I asked her, how is it going? And she said, we've never been this close. And there is actually no physical relationship, meaning love-making relationship. So it's, you know, it's like a beautiful plate of different appetizers that you can try. And if a piece is missing, you still have something else to taste.
Roger, you gotta buy a nativity scene and put a Star of Bethlehem over your bed.
It's a holy experience every time, you know. But anyway, some other things. The lubrication, that's great. You know, we resisted that for many years, and I know it was getting really uncomfortable. But now can't live without it. You know, it's great.
The first thing we pack in the suitcase.
You know, I noticed this morning we're going to Vermont for the solar eclipse. I come out of the bathroom, and on the top of the bed, there is the coconut oil for me back in the suitcase. And I thought,
hey, everybody, Andrew Love, and I just wanted to stop this episode real quick and remind you all that it's not a mistake that these couples are doing really well. And one amazing way of accomplishing that on a daily basis, whether you're single or whether you will find yourself in a blessing already, is to read the Core of the Universe book together. This book has been specifically put together to be an experience. It's not just a book. There's words from true parents. There's a lot of really cool stories in there. There's testimonies. But at the end of every section, there are questions because it's meant to be engaging and interactive. So go to highnoon.org/core and pick up a copy. We deliver it all over the world. We have set this up to make it as easy as possible for you to get yourself a copy. We have got you. Just go to highnoon.org /core and get yourself a copy. It's a game changer. If you would like to experience the same quality of love and adoration that you see in these beautiful couples. All right, let's get back to it.
Hint, hint. He's got plans.
You know his intentions.
This is we do a lot of traveling, and you can buy these little single-use packets.
I didn't know that.
All right.
Those are pretty cool. Yeah.
It's better than getting all over your suitcase when it leaks.
Anyway, just some other points
Those.
for couples who are having struggle. Okay, my wife mentioned about doing the Tai Chi and everything. I think exercising, doing something to keep your body limber and in good shape is really important. You know, we need to look good for our spouse, and you know, even though, you know, I might not be like a young hunk anymore, you know, and you know, things are a little drooping around the places, you know. You know, I find my wife attractive, and I enjoy seeing her naked, and she finds that embarrassing sometimes because she maybe feels, you know, I've had 3 children and things are not in the place where they used to be anymore. But I find looking at her, you know, stimulating, and I think we need to look good for our spouse and do our best to do that. And that actually doesn't require a lot of effort. Dress up a little bit, put on some perfume. My wife appreciates when I put on perfume. She's very sensitive to smell, and I need to do a better job at that sometimes. But those are important because that builds that attraction and that desire for each other. And also, if you're physically limber and you know, able to, you know, do 5 push-ups or whatever, it makes it easier when you actually come to making love. But there are other ways to get around that. You can try different positions, which are, you know, not so physically demanding as well. Positions, yes.
I was just reading in the AARP magazine. I don't know if all of you read that magazine, but they always have good articles about elders. And there's a new thing now. It's called furniture. It's called sex furniture. And it's to make things easier for older couples.
Oh, I got that article too. Yes.
It was very interesting.
Hot topic.
I think a lot of times, you know, if you're going through life and you're communicating, and whatever comes up, you just deal with it and you work through it. And if you have challenges, you talk about it and you work through it and you overcome it and you move on. So I think people that are living like that, when things happen, they figure out ways to make it even better. You know, like Danielle was talking about the couple that was no longer having relationships, and now they're happier than ever before. So this is really important, just to keep the communication open during everything.
That's why I like walking, because when you're both facing forward, it's not confrontational, and you can hold hands and walk and talk and talk about things. I think communication is really important to keep the home fire burning. We need to really communicate. You know, I just wanted to share about this movie called Hope Springs. It's one of my favorite movies. It stars Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones. And that movie is about an older couple, and they've neglected their relationship and stopped having a sexual relationship. And she, which is very common, she suddenly wants more for her life and her relationship. And they seek counseling. And he's very reluctant. He's not so interested. It's hysterical, the acting's. But it really, at the end, even if you're watching it, you think, oh my gosh, they're going to lose it. But at the very end, they actually rededicate their marriage. So I told you this. It's to give you hope in the middle. But it's a really good movie, and it's fun to watch together.
Mm.
It helps stimulate conversation between a couple.
Mm. Communication is so important. I've seen so many couples who just stop talking about these things, and
Yeah.
that is, if you stop communicating, then basically there's no relationship. There's, and without that, everything kind of just it flatlines, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you're just two people living together, and that, I think, is horrible for people, and that's what really kills those relationships. You know?
Well, so it seems similar to why a lot of young people don't pursue the blessing is because of shame, because they don't feel good enough. And when we interview some older couples and their sexual life as a couple, as a blessed couple, has dried up, they kind of don't want to touch on that because it hurts so much, because it's obviously something they care deeply about, and they feel like they've failed by some measurement that they have in their head, and maybe they're irredeemable. So you mentioned, I think, Aunt Marjorie, you said it's really imperative to communicate as a couple, but how about something like this? Like, do your couples ever talk to other couples about sex, and how does that work? And because I feel like there's an absence of that at every stage of marriage. I think too many couples try to fix things by themselves rather than, leverage the fact that they're in a community. So do you have a support system for your couple with other couples? Anybody here?
Well, we run the marriage course, right? And in the
Mhm.
marriage course, actually, we have run it 15 times. We just finished
Wow.
it last week. And we have hundreds of people coming through the course, young and old. And there is one session, I think is number 6, that it's all about, about lovemaking. What is it called?
Good sex.
Good sex. So there's a lot of good tips there, and it's a wonderful way to introduce the topic. And then we always make ourselves available to mentor people if they need. So that is really something that somebody can look at, even just that part, and do the exercises in there. The assignments are really paramount to good communication on this topic. And Roger has heard from men who took the course that was the best lovemaking session they've ever had.
After that one,
After that
the homework
one,
session.
that's the homework.
That course is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Are you part of any Trinity, any of you, or group of people that share about what's going on in your marriage, and does that help?
We have a lot of people.
We have people individually come to us, either the husband or the wife, but as couples, no. And that part of it is they don't communicate well usually. But usually it's always someone coming, many times a woman toward my wife or a man toward me, and they'll tell me their story. But it has to they have to come as a couple to help people. At least that's my opinion.
What we found is a good beginning anywhere. I mean, for me, through the journey of marriage, I could always call Nora Spurgeon or Betsy Jones, and I did.
Really? You had to call them?
Yeah. Oh, I did. Oh my gosh. Betsy, I remember her saying, "Now, Marge, how long have you been blessed?" I said, 10 years. Oh, yeah, 10 years. This always happens at 10 years. Anyway, it's important to always have somebody that you can feel comfortable to talk to. And, you can ask the questions about lubricant. And I always say, go to the doctor.
Some of these issues, they go way back to their childhood in many cases. Traumatic experiences they've had in their life. And because their marriage doesn't start off where they're communicating, it just builds up and builds up over time. And they almost need like a spiritual breakthrough. I think in some ways they have to come together over the word and talk about things. Something needs to break open. And that's what we find. People are locked in certain things over the years, and they've never communicated about any of it. That's the tragedy of some people's marriages, and that's sad. I think the marriage course is a very good way to open things up, even for us who feel we have a good relationship. It was exciting to go through because we realized things about ourselves that we never kind of knew before. So,
I think also that one of the issues we face in our community of faith is the fact that we have centered a life on the fall rather than the principle of creation. And I know for me, that has never been the case, because when I first listened to the divine principle, what struck me was like the first chapter was something that resonated with my original nature. And I think that what we have done to ourselves, to our children, is inculcate this concept of, it's all wrong, the fall, the fall, the fall. And that is really wrong. It's, we haven't really done this with our kids. We've been very open. We've been very open about ourselves. We have emphasized the sacrality, the sacredness of our, we used to call it your temple, right? Your holy temple, your private parts is your holy place. But we've always been very careful not to condemn something that actually is created by God, because the fall of man was the separation of heart, not being able to attend to God as our heavenly parent, not the actual love making, because that would mean God has created something that is wrong. So, people carry that sense of shame, that they carry the guilt. And if you look at movies and if you look at our society, it's all like, oh my gosh, you're bombarded left and right. And I believe that we really need to make a huge shift in that. And that is probably what High Noon is doing anyway, with your intervention, with what you're doing. But I think it's really important to understand that we need to be co-creators, not live in guilt of my sexuality.
Well, I guess on that note, we are in this time in history where we are trying to etch out new territory and calling it Chanuguk, right? And we typically talk about Chanuguk in a very religious way, or a very kind of like something's going to happen. There's going to be some changes and people are all going to change or something. But seldom do I hear Chanuguk and sex together. Only when High Noon is like, hey, teacher, I have a question. So I'd love to hear from you all. How does sexuality fit into Chanuguk? Like, how as couples are you talking about sex, I guess, as a couple, and then as community, how do we talk about sex, and together with our children, which you just brought up, the topic of sex? How do you feel is the original way of connecting and talking and about sexuality? It's a lot of silence.
we pray before we make love every time. And Mitzvah, there's one quote by Father. He said that the walls of your bedroom are waiting for the celebration of love, for the masters of love to come. And she really feels that we both feel that feel God's presence. We can that we are reflecting Him more when we make love.
Yeah.
We have a house that has very thin walls.
Creaky floors.
Very creaky floors. Yes. So if we're up there, they can hear everything down here.
But there's nobody.
But I think we speak very openly with our children about our relationship, and
they always say, "Go and get a room." One of the things, though, that I have experienced is that we have had a few reset buttons in our life in which we decided for a certain period of time to abstain from lovemaking and really devote our relationship for 3 weeks, whatever it was, to God, and keep our relationship as friends, as husband and wife, but without that aspect. And then when we have come together at the end of that, let's call it condition, and really invited God to participate in our lovemaking, I mean, it's just been mind-blowing. And one of the things that I always had in the back of my mind is I once read that the Reverend Moon said, Father said, once you go to the spirit world, the first thing as a couple that God will ask you is to make love in front of God. And for years, I was haunted by the whole idea of having God witness my relationship with my husband. I don't know why, but I thought, what the heck? You know, it's like, can I just do something else in the meantime? But actually, through those periods of time in which we took a break, in which for us women, I watch a movie in which a woman is mistreated, abused, raped, and I shut down. I emotionally shut down to my husband because he's a man. And in that moment, he represents that ugliness that men can bring into the world of women, right? And it takes me a while. That's why even through those scenes, I always ask Roger, fast forward. I don't want to see that because I know emotionally I feel the brunt. But when we do those reset button conditions and we come together, there is a freedom of spirit, of heart, of beauty that we really believe that sets a stone for the kingdom of God on earth, the kingdom too.
I think it's really important for parents to be involved in open discussions with their children about these issues. And I've always tried to do that, especially with my sons.
Yes.
And
I did
to
it
guide
with our
them.
daughter too.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. So just the, answering questions or just sitting down, taking opportunities to address things that he might have seen in a movie or something, or how does that work?
The best times are when we go for a drive together or something. Are you sitting in the car? No, I'm talking about with my kids.
With the children.
With the children.
Yeah.
Because you're not staring at each other. And guys are not good at sitting down and staring at each other and talking at each other. But if you're doing something, like if you're out, walking or driving together and you're in the car and they can't escape because, we're going at 60 miles an hour down the highway.
Our children would never do that.
Anyway. You can open up the discussion, and say, so what do you think about this or whatever? Did you see that movie the other night? What do you think about that? And that can lead to deeper discussions, and you can talk about this. And I've always shared with my sons about the beauty of that relationship and the sanctity and the holiness of being able to make love, and what a beautiful thing that is in God's sight. So I think we need to do that.
And it's interesting that we keep the door open, even with our oldest son who just got blessed and married and got blessed, and we have lunch with him one-on-one every month, and I can openly ask my son, how is your intimate relationship going with your wife? And he has no problems sharing whatever he thinks is safe, but he shares. He shares with me, he shares with my husband, and that brings such comfort, because we are that vertical protection. But to feel that a 27-year-old man doesn't have any problem sharing with his parents, that is actually so incredibly profound as a parent for us.
You're probably more the exception than the rule in our church. I mean, I don't know many parents or families like that. That's kind of the exception. You've done a very good job. I can't say that we've done that good of a job, but Father, like you said, where the couples make love in front of God in the spirit world. And then Father said, well, actually 3 generations should all be in the same room making love. Now,
I'm face.
Not ready.
Yeah. I remember when the Codon leader came around sharing that with everybody, and everybody was kind of shocked, you know. But those were Father's words. So I'm glad there is an emphasis now that Mother's leading on the principle of creation.
Yeah.
And I know I've taken Dr. Wilson's class, and one of the things that came out from the Wally Wallbound is there's no commandment about to Adam and Eve, that originated from the Old Testament, from Moses. But God just assumed everything would be good. He had no anxiety or worrisome about people falling. And so this is really the era of Chung-Il-Guk, where we can have this openness. And I think that's really good what you just shared. We should all be in that state. That's very beautiful.
Yeah. I also wanted to just ask a follow-up question to that, Aunt Daniela, about your conversation with your son. Does it come out of a natural desire to know your son's heart? Because I think a lot of parents, because they're maybe so far behind in this conversation with their kids, they might be like, well, that seems kind of nosy. But I think that the most natural thing is you want to know the health of your child. And this is just one aspect of your life. So is it just like a natural extension of the rapport that you have with your child?
Well, our son decided after we couldn't find a matching for him because the girls were older, we gave him permission to go and find his own spouse. And he did. Mm-hmm. And the amazing thing is that they were together for 6 years and never once had an intimate relationship, because my son knew what the principal said, and he explained it to his wife, to his fiancée, and she agreed to this until the blessing. So it was incredible for us and for them to go this journey together. And they lived together too. They lived together. They slept in the same bed with a dog in the middle, but they both respected. We had the commitment ceremony. We had everything, and they respected their decisions until they got blessed, and then they got married. So for us to be guiding them through all this, it started from when they were born. And I had never had that sense of shame or sex is bad, or no, I always felt this is the most wonderful gift that God has given us. And we imparted that into our children. So it's just a follow-up. And because there's so, of course, when it came to the 3-day ceremony, I remember them blushing. And, because of course it wasn't, and his wife to be was like, oh my gosh, do we have to talk about this? So we gave them the manual. We said, okay, this is what's expected. If you have questions, please ask. But we know she's very reserved. But then with our son, we followed up on everything, and it was very natural for him to share. But it's built, right? You can't build Rome in one day. Yeah, sure. It's just something that you what is it called? Scaffolding. It's like when you build something, you build it a little bit at a time, stacking. And just at one point it just falls into place because you have created that. But it's true, Richard, not many people have that freedom of sharing, because there is that sense of shame and guilt that people carry, which is really what God doesn't want. That God doesn't want us to be ashamed of who we are and our body and what we can do with our body to bring love to somebody else and joy.
I think a lot of that shame, especially in the first generation, comes from experiences perhaps before they joined the church as well. And mistakes or regrets that they have about the past that make them feel, I guess, embarrassed to share about these things with their spouses. But we need to really go beyond that. We are reborn, we are renewed people through the blessing, and we are in that realm of God's love and protection. So we need to really share with our children and with other people in the same way, that this is really God's blessing for us.
Yeah, I think that's a theme for this hour. You know, we have just a couple more minutes, but the idea of what you're used to seems normal to you, right? So whether it's difficulty in your marriage, then this is my marriage. I just have one of those indemnity marriages. I'm just stuck. Like you repeat these things and then they just become true, right? That's just true for you. But what you've done in this circumstance with your kids, but also what you're suggesting that couples do is hold hands, have fun, and make that your new normal. So if you're struggling, like you're saying, you don't build Rome in a day, you don't build love in a day necessarily, especially if there's some separation. But it's, again, the kind of the journey. If you're focused on, oh, I'm not having sex, then you're focused on the wrong thing. That's the wrong metric. That's the result. More the process. And you've all laid out a beautiful kind of path to create love, to make love, and making love can be manifest through physical act of sex, but it's also some very adorable things that you mentioned, like Mitsue putting your head on Uncle Dave's shoulders, holding hands or feet, or tickling behind the ear, going for walks, the busing. So some very inspiring answers. And I guess just in wrapping up, because we do have to wrap up in the next minute or two, for anybody listening out there who's just that you'd like to just say something hopeful and optimistic to, do you have any words of hope for them in terms of couples who might not be in the best place? Do you have any words of optimism for them?
Concentrate on something you really like about your spouse. Start from that, even just one thing, and that can build up. I love my husband's ears. It's beautiful thing I've ever seen.
I got to check those out.
She likes my feet better, actually. I have very good-looking feet.
Wow. Amazing. Yeah. Start with something you like.
Actually, you know, as you get older, you have more time together. Life is great as you get older. I mean, this is one of the best times of our life. We have more time to be together. We're not just doing mission work all the time. And it's a great, physically, spiritually, every way, it's the greatest time in our life, I feel. You wish you just had the strength of your youth. You've got the wisdom, but you don't have the strength.
There's a pill for that.
Yeah, and there's a focus. He's always focused on, he wants me to have a wonderful time and me to be happy. And I more than any other time in our lives, he's so focused on my joy and fulfillment. And so I just think it's the best.
And I got square dancing lessons for her. That changed everything.
Yeah.
Wow.
Dance.
We did that too, right?
And Mitsue, Uncle Dave, any last words of optimism?
I want everybody to think about what I think Demonima, true father, said, that you should not think to make love because you feel love, but by making love, you are creating the love, bonding, creating happiness, oneness through making love. Because I thought, oh, you have to, you know, make good connection, loving one another before you make love. But this one said you make love through love making, you are creating the bond. It's I couldn't think that way before, but now I know. Now I know.
Good.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Uncle Dave?
Great. Yeah, Marjorie, you said one thing last week. I remember that your advice to couples: don't stop making love, because when you stop, it's hard to get started again. And there's one couple, one woman asked me, David, is there an expiration date on love? And last time I checked on there, it didn't have any expiration stamp on it. Uh, just, yeah, I think God wanted us to enjoy lovemaking when, as a young couple, as a middle-aged couple, as an older couple. And granted, things may happen physically, so you can no longer do it. Um, but as long as you're physically able, then yeah, our advice is keep doing it.
If they keep doing.
Yeah, my wife's uncle recently said at the age of 92, "I'm still upholding the family name." Like that.
Wow. I didn't know the family name was Penis, but great to hear.
92. My own parents, until they were in their 80s, they were enjoying a very vibrant relationship as well. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Yeah, Father
thank
said,
you.
in one of Father's quotes, he said, I came forth and hoisted my banner. And he was in his 70s when he said that. And I don't know. I can only imagine what he meant.
All right, you all. Thank you so much for stopping by and doing this. We have another session starting right now. But genuinely, I hope people got a lot out of this. I know they did. Anybody who listened. Thank you so much, everybody, for opening up and letting this conversation happen, because it's long overdue. So thank you. God bless you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Hey there. I hope you enjoyed that episode. As you could tell by my face, a magical experience for myself. I hope it was magical for you. I hope you got a lot out of it. Let me invite you to the Ascend program. I want to take a little bit of time just to make sure that you understand what this thing is. You see, every few months, we open up registration so that people can join our porn recovery program. If you have any issues at all with porn, even, oh, it's just once a month, oh, I just masturbate every once in a while, this is all an opportunity for you to figure out, why do you do these things? Why is it that you run away from yourself? Why is it that you use sex as a form of escape rather than a form of connection to God? There's so much that you can learn about yourself if you prioritize the process of learning. And that's all the Ascend program seeks to do, is to help you to understand yourself at the highest possible level regarding sexuality, about your unhealthy habits and replacing those with healthy habits, so that your sexuality aligns you with God and your ideals. So please consider joining. Go to highnoon.org. It's right there at the top of our website. Register. Get yourself in the Ascend program. If you've been thinking about it, do it. If you haven't been thinking about it, do it. Just do it. Thanks so much, everybody. See you next week.